Aew Dynamite Maximum Carnage from Cincinnati, Ohio. The Death Riders in the main event. The Women's Casino Battle Royal. Excalibur, Taz, and Toni on the call from a very small, very unique arena in Cincinnati, Ohio. It had not a Hammerstein ballroom effect, but more of a garage type effect. It came across a little bit small. The arena did take me a little bit to get into the action tonight. Did the crowd affect it? What happened tonight on Dynamite? Let's find out with this quick hit. First up, we did get a nice little fun match. We got Kenny Omega versus Brian Cage set up from the week before, where Brian Cage attacking Kenny Omega. Omega getting his first match back, feeling out Cage, targeting the midsection, shoulder blocks, body drop. Omega goes for a Frankensteiner, counter on the first, goes for a second and through. Back and forth. They kept mentioning in the matchup about the diverticulitis that Kenny Omega suffered. They almost wanted to make a drinking game out of it. Diverticulitis, diverticulitis. Take a shot every time you hear it. Might not be good for your intestines, but we'd have some fun. Out on the floor, Bryan with a military plus. He drops Kenny to the outside announcer desk. Archer and Don Callis get involved. The family. They get their shots. They go to commercial break and then back. Cage throwing Omega around onto the ramp. Fighting Bryan with a powerbomb. A 1 and a 2. Ultimately, we do go fast forward to the end. We get Omega fighting down to the corner with a Liger Bomb. A V-trigger. So close. Kenny presses the attack. Electric chair. And then 1, 2, 3. It's the one-winged angel for the pinfall. And the win for Kenny Omega. Post-match, we get Don Callis attacking, but Will Ospreay comes and makes the save on behalf of Kenny. Ultimately, they work together to fight off Lance Archer, Brian Cage, and then Kyle Fletcher appears, and Ospreay throws himself over the ropes with a plancha to take him out. And then Takeshita comes out and holds the International Championship up from the front of Kenny, and they start brawling. And ultimately, the Don Callis family does get the advantage. Moving on to a commercial. And then we're back. We get Ricochet entering the ring with his music playing. He's got a golden ticket. He's got the scissors, talking about and showing a picture is worth 1,000 words. Showing what he did to Swerve Strickland. Swerve Strickland music plays, but it's Prince Nana appearing from behind. Ricochet hits him with the chair. And then Swerve Strickland appears, but Ricochet bolts and cuts out the door. It looked at this moment like Swerve was going to get the microphone and some time to speak, but we were cut right to a cutscene very quickly with Mercedes Moné getting some time as what is it like to be in a day in the life of a CEO. We then come back, we go to a 6-man tag match. MVP Montel Vontavious Porter making an in-ring return, lacing up the boots once again. The Hurt Syndicate versus Mark Briscoe and Private Party. We get a little bit of a quick match back and forth on this one. Nothing major to report, other than we do get a Hurt Syndicate winning by a pinfall with super kicks from Shelton Benjamin on Mark Quinn. Ultimately, this is kind of where they're going with the Hurt Business, and to get another victory. And then we get led into Jeff Jarrett making his entrance, talking about his retirement tour in 2025. And the last few weeks have been very humbling for him. Enter MJF, and business picks up as we're reminded on the microphone of how good MJF really is and how much Jeff Jarrett can hang. They bring up Owen Hart. They bring up the tournament last year. MJF says Jarrett wasn't fooling anyone. He called him a carny at one point in time. Ultimately, Double J goes back and forth. You know, in a good 10 minutes in the segment here. But what we ultimately do get is a future showdown between these two coming up very soon. And ultimately, we end with Karen Jarrett ultimately making her way down as MJF and them go in. And MJF talks about his Wembley Stadium, 82,000. A lot of good back and forth dialogue in this one. It did kind of up the pace after a little bit of a slower tag match. And then we move ahead to some more promos, but we get Christian Cage and Hook. One thing I liked about the matchup with this being a grudge match, I like the fact that Christian Cage entered first and Hook attacked him quickly and ambushed him as he was making his entrance. This is a grudge match. Why would Hook wait for everything to be announced? Why would he just not start it right away? So these two going back and forth at Hook hammers him, strikes down on him, and then ultimately Christian offering a hug to Hook, almost being supportive, wanting to bring him into his family. Hook then goes with a classic hug and a suplex all the way up and over, very Hook style. I like this matchup. They were kind of all around the place. Ultimately, we get some frog splashes, but it wasn't enough, and then Hook mounts a comeback. There's a judo throw, a bridging northern suplex for a 1 and a 2. Kill switch countered with a perfect plex or a type move, but ultimately, no. We're looking for Red Rum. Christian sets up the ropes. Hook lets go, letting him crash into the mat. We go a little bit forward. Hook ends up getting the win by disqualification as Christian Cage calls for help, and all his family come in, causing the DQ, and this is doomed to move forward. Post-match, we get the patriarchy swarming, and Taz is about to get up for commentary desk, but he says to save his son, but he's trying to be professional. But then Samoa Joe makes his return on Dynamite, so he doesn't really have to get involved. I could see a mixed or a 3-on-3 tag match with maybe a return of Taz. I can see Taz getting in the ring with Samoa Joe and Hook. Maybe a submission-based trios tag, and then making Christian ultimately tap. I could see that coming down the line. But Samoa Joe is back. He dismantled all of the members of Patriarchy one by one, even as he holds Kip Sabian up. Guys, thank you for liking and just talking all things wrestling with us here on Tap Out Talk. Also on the fans of ProWrestling.com. We got a Twitter space going on right now on Wednesday nights after every Dynamite. I'm going to jump in as soon as I'm done with this. Will you guys? So ultimately, we then get into the Women's Casino Gauntlet Battle Royal match. Mariah May out first with her championship, sitting ringside, providing good commentary and some fun time. Mariah May is out first, but ultimately in the match is going to be Chris Statlander and Jamie Hayter starting the matchup out. They get a collar and elbow, struggling around the ring. They go to striking. Hayter drops her with a big boot. The countdown goes off, and Megan Bayne is out. The announcers had to mention that Megan Bayne did compete early in AEW. Tony Schiavone, I believe it was, acting like he didn't really remember her ever being in AEW. Then we do get an explanation that she spent the last few years in Stardom. She's got an Egyptian pharaoh goddess type feel to her. Bayne drops Statlander with a vicious lariat, vertical suplex, and Hayter is reversed down to the timer again. Julia Hart is out fourth. Always good to see Julia Hart in the ring. Hart and Hayter get into it on the ramp, and then ultimately we get a little more back and forth. Willow Nightingale is out fifth in the gauntlet. Willow getting into it with Megan Bayne, trading strikes. Chris comes from behind her on Bayne with a jawbreaker. And then the clock, tick-tock, tick-tock, comes down again. It's Toni Storm. Classic Toni Storm, that is. Not the timeless one. Coming out, the rocker herself. Storm with snapmares, shoulder blocks. Nightingale with a crossbody to the floor. On Bayne, rolling into a smiling for the camera. Both women are back on their feet, trading blows. Out next is Harley Cameron at number 7. High kick into a cover on Toni. Hayter pulls Cameron off with a German suplex. Hayter on Hart. And ultimately, we get a schoolboy for a 1 and a 2. Hart spits the mist at Cameron. The Northern Lariat. Storm picks her up from behind. Toni Storm wins by pinfall with an inside cradle to become the number 1 Women's World Champion contender. Ultimately, she will go against Mariah May in a return bout with the women that originally stole her title. Will the title change hands? We'll find out on a future show. We then have Jon Moxley in the main event. Mox versus Powerhouse Hobbs, winning the men's gauntlet casino match a while back, a few weeks ago. And now we've got Moxley with an elbow hammer and blows, making his entrance through the crowd, of course, as normal. Paul Turner backs him off. Hobbs to the floor. The good match that sent... I was worried that Hobbs was going to lose a little momentum that he started to garner here, but Hobbs came across looking pretty strong in the matchup. Overall, it was given a good solid 20 minutes of back and forth. Hobbs gets him under, stampedes him in the corner, climbing up, tearing it. Moxley's ear, biting it. Moxley crashes to the floor. Shoulder blocks. It sends Mox all the way out, and we go to a break and then back We get trading strikes in the middle of the ring. Mox bleeds. He always bleeds in these matchups, and it's no different tonight. But ultimately, we do get Wheeler Yuta coming down, making a Busaki knee before running off. Powerhouse, though, recovers. Powerhouse won't stay down. We get a Bulldog choke, and ultimately, Powerhouse Hobbs is fading. Moxley wins by referee stoppage with the Bulldog choke, retaining the AEW World Championship. And that's all she wrote. Post-match, we do get FTR and Cope coming down for the save. Ultimately, we get them coming down, equaling the odds a little bit with the Death Riders. But that was AEW Dynamite Maximum Carnage, part of a 2-night series with Collision Maximum Carnage coming tomorrow night. But ultimately, did it pan out? The small arena really threw me off tonight. The crowd seemed like they tried to get it going, but when you're dealing with an arena that's normally literally half of an arena, it almost looked like a warehouse factory or a garage of sorts for somebody. I know I heard that they did have to change their venue last second, which put them into a random arena in Cincinnati, Ohio. But ultimately, it did take me a while to get into the show. I'm sure the crowd did their best and did their job trying to really get into it tonight. But if you actually look at the work in the match, I like the Casino Battle Royal. I'm a sucker for the gimmick matches. It was nice to see Toni Storm get the win and revisit her classic feud that she never got that payback for. Ultimately, I like the idea that Powerhouse Hobbs came out and actually looked pretty strong against Moxley, but not a big giant threat, but still looked strong enough and it didn't detract from him. But that's the main things of my results and thoughts. What are yours? Let me know at some point. I'm gonna head out.